Well, let's talk more about the self-isolation support scheme being piloted with Alfie Stirling, Chief Economist at the Left of Centre think tank, the New Economics Foundation. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Well, over a year into lockdown, and now there's this pilot. What do you think about it? Why it's happening now?
Well, I think there is a strong case here for it being too little, too late. But having said that, I mean, the points you just made. But having said that, it is welcome that government is now looking at this issue more seriously. Never too late to some extent, and particularly around housing and greater support for housing, which has been a big issue in this country. But look, stepping back, there's a big elephant in the room, which is a lack of financial support for families. And on this issue, the UK is a big global outlier. We've got some of the weakest statutory sick pay among advanced economies. Only about, on average, 10% of people's earnings get replaced if you're unwell. And that compares to 100% in the US and Germany, or 90% in France. And actually, if you don't tackle that, if you don't tackle the financial support that's missing, you end up with really poor compliance with isolation, which, of course, risks everyone's health and the economy.
Could you put some figures, though, on turning that around if the statutory sick pay were to be uprated? Because obviously, I mean, the government's already spent huge amounts of money on the furlough scheme and various other measures. To do that with statutory sick pay, what would it cost?
Sure. I mean, the first thing to point out here is that the cost of not doing enough to support families is, of course, higher transmission of the virus because of lower compliance of isolation. Therefore, the need for lockdowns or restricting business activity, which of course not only cost the economy and jobs, but also cost the government in lower tax receipts. But actually putting a fix in place and making sure people do have the financial support to isolate isn't even expensive before you take account of the fact that there are lots of benefits further down the chain. So, for example, one proposal is to make sure that people can furlough for a few days if they need to as a result of a positive COVID test. At the moment, that isn't possible. And were that to be brought on stream, it would cost about in the region of £300 million a month. So, a fraction of what we're already spending in subsidising wages, but potentially a huge positive impact, both in terms of suppressing the virus transmission, preventing lockdowns, but also boosting the economy as well.
And would you just see that it is a temporary measure specifically pinned to COVID?
Well, I think more widely the UK has a real issue with living standards, and it's actually been to some extent really overlooked. At the moment, we have modelling by the organisation I work for, the New Economics Foundation, that shows that 21 million people in this country, almost 1 in 3, are living below a level of income that is sufficient to live on, to live a decent quality of life. And of course, that's bad in a pandemic because it means that people are struggling to isolate and not go to work. It makes us really vulnerable and exposed in a crisis like this. But of course, it's also really damning in the long term as well to be in one of the richest economies in the world and to have such a high proportion of the population not being able to live a decent quality of life. So no, I think there is a particular issue today and a particular issue in dealing with crises, but actually the UK has a long-term issue of inequality and weak living standards for a large number of people.
Alfie Stirling of the New Economics Foundation, thank you.